All right, well, my name is Anthony Rodino. I'm the Deputy Chief of P3MD in the Nashville District. I just want to welcome Don and Lisa and all our retirees here and all the Nashville District employees. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we're going to have a 2024 Distinguished Civilian Employee Award Ceremony. So I have the distinct honor of recognizing one of the district's eminent retirees, Mr. Don Getty. As you will see, Don has served the district, the region, and the nation in a clearly exceptional manner, contributing to the great reputation and honor of the Corps of Engineers. The list of eligible employees is long throughout our district's history, so this is even a more meaningful recognition for someone to be bestowed with this honor. I know many of the retirees also here today have been bestowed with this honor, so I really appreciate you guys coming out and celebrating for Don as well. So congratulations on this honor. Major Davis, if you want to please come forward to give your opening remarks.
Yeah, thanks. Good afternoon. Good afternoon on Wednesday. Good grief. Am I good on audio back here? Yeah, thanks. So I got to sit down with Don and Lisa before this. Thanks for that time. This is my first interaction with Distinguished Civilian Employee Award. So, learning about this, being here today, I feel privileged. I really do. So I'd just start by saying just thanks for everyone to be here. We're celebrating an exceptional individual and his remarkable contributions to Nashville District and the Corps of Engineers. The Distinguished Civilian Employee Award is one of the highest honors we can bestow. It recognizes a federal employee for at least 20 years of experience. Blew past that. Good job. Someone has demonstrated dedication and leadership throughout his career, and nominees must have been retired for at least 2 years. This is so that we ensure that and recognize those whose legacy has had a long-term influence on the success of the Corps of Engineers. This award honors not just length in service, but the lasting impact made on the organization and the people. Today, we induct another name into this distinguished group. Mr. Don Getty dedicated 38 years of service to the Nashville District. Being named a distinguished civilian employee is a testament to the highest standards of professionalism. Talk to you about this privately, but this is a big deal. So thanks, Don. What truly sets Don apart, talking to his peers, talking to those that have worked with you, is your ability to lead through challenges, navigating complex problems, resolving unforeseen obstacles, but fostering meaningful relationships, even with the stakeholders we talked about. Don's leadership was always marked by integrity, humor, that's true, well, funny guy, and a commitment to the mission's success. You didn't just manage projects, Don. You mentored others, you built strong partnerships, and you left a lasting legacy that will continue to shape and strengthen this organization. Don, on behalf of the Nashville District, the Corps of Engineers, thanks for your dedication and your service. Your legacy is one of the remarkables. It had a remarkable impact, and it's most deserving of this recognition. It is my distinct honor to induct Don Getty as a distinguished civilian employee of the Nashville District. Thank you, Don.
All right, thank you, sir. A few more details. We're going to talk a little bit more about Mr. Getty here. Don retired from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in 2021 after 38 years of service, as the deputy just mentioned. His career began as a co-op in the H&H branch in 1982. H&H, clearly where good things come from, so I definitely have to agree with that. After serving as a Water Resources Section Chief in EC, he transferred to the project management team and served as a PM until his retirement. Don led the district to success on a multitude of projects, from technical lead on the Kentucky Lock Addition feasibility study to the Wolf Creek Foundation remediation project, and finally as the project manager for Kentucky Lock. Not only is Don technically capable, but one of his biggest gifts to USACE was his ability to make personal connections and forge critical relationships. These relationships with the navigation industry, for example, continue to serve the district and the region due to his efforts. He personally invested himself in the interests of the mission's success and long-range sustainability. Through Don's professional ability, personal example, performance, and accomplishments, he has enhanced the image of the Nashville District, and his intense loyalty to the district and its employees was evident in all that he touched. Don is a true credit to himself, the Nashville District, the Great Lakes and Ohio River Division, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Now I will read the certificate verbiage that will be presented to Don. For his outstanding service in accomplishing the mission of the district in a distinguished and professional manner, the benefits derived from his service to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Nashville District constitutes the real and lasting memorial to his achievements and dedication to public service. Don met the challenges with unswerving determination and technical ability and set an example of devotion to duty for his successors to follow. Thank you from a very grateful Nashville District. Sir, if you want to come forward with Mr. Getty, go ahead and get their certificate. And Lisa, after you're done taking the picture, if you want to come up. With that, Don, any comments?
I think I might say a word or two. How long do I have?
As long as you want,
I'm glad Anthony recited a little bit of my H&H work and remember my roots back when I did real work. I'm really ecstatic that Dennis and Bob are here to reminisce on those days. So I'm obviously very honored by this award and flabbergasted that they chose Don Getty. But I think that we all know that, especially in this organization, you can't work in a vacuum, and that, you know, you have to be on a team. So anything that I've achieved have been as a result of the people that I was surrounded with. And I was surrounded by some of the most fantastic people that I can ever imagine working in the Nashville District. And so I thought I would share a little bit about those people that really should be reflected in this award more so than Don Getty. And I have a list of the top 6 from the Kentucky Lock Project. So Mike Wilson didn't make it. I'm sorry. But I'm sure you probably know who my top of that list. And Tony Ellis is at the top of that list. If y'all that don't know, Tony Ellis was a resident engineer at Kentucky Lock. He started in 1999 and unfortunately passed away suddenly in 2016. But Tony was the most amazing person I've ever met in my life. And he did outstanding things on Kentucky Lock, and the project wouldn't be where it is today without Tony Ellis. I was going to tell you a little bit more about him, but I think in the interest of time, I probably won't. But I am going to describe to you some of the things he did that reflects about how great a construction manager he was. In 2009, we were about to convert the railroad there to its new alignment, and we had to do that over a whole one weekend. And we had to build 2 new bridges, completely bridges on a weekend to meet their schedule. And Tony did just a tremendous job of organizing all these contractors, getting their ducks in a row, and the railroad itself to accomplish this over one weekend. And it went without a hitch. That railroad actually got on the tracks, ran the first train across 2 hours early. But that was just an amazing accomplishment. And that's testimony to the way Tony Ellis worked. And he was just truly an amazing person when it came to personnel as well. And he was especially great when things went south. And Tony was the person you wanted on the job when that happened. I don't know if y'all remember, some of y'all might remember, we had a runaway crane barge that went downstream and took out a power line across the Tennessee River, which was a big deal. At 2:00 in the morning, one time we had a tow with barges came and rammed the upstream cofferdam, and Tony had to go out there at 3 a.m. Do you remember that? Were you there, Ron, when that happened? Yeah. Yeah. You weren't there at 3 a.m. though, you know. We had a fatality on Kentucky Lock, and Tony, it was super hard on him, of course, but he handled it very well. And of course, we had the cattle truck that overturned on the curve of the bridge. And it was carrying maybe 10 head of cattle, and they came out. The driver was fine, but the cattle started scattered all across the project. And Tony went out there like a trail boss and herded them all up. I have a great picture of him waving his hat, herding these cattle in. So it just shows you he could do anything. And he truly was something else for the project. And he left a big legacy. And one of his biggest legacies is Jody Robinson. Some of y'all may know Jody. But Jody came to Kentucky Lock in 2002, straight out of college, and Tony took Jody under his wing. And he just did amazing things with Jody. And now I would say Jody's like a Tony 2.0, except that Jody does some things better than Tony does. And he's just truly an amazing manager, leader, and a person as a whole. He's exceptional at training contractors, at them to make them more efficient and to make them safer. So he's done amazing things like that. And he puts out construction mods like nobody's business very well and fast. So he's something else. And usually when I was going to say that Jody also is probably going to leave his legacy because he also took somebody under his wings, Alex Calhoun. And I think she's going to be the next Tony 3.0. And she's going to do truly amazing things. And Jody's making sure of that. So really blessed to have him on the project. Whenever I mention Jody, Barney's close behind in the sentence. And of course, I'm talking about Barney Schulte that y'all don't know. And he was a technical manager on Kentucky Lock up until he retired 2 years ago. And Jody and Barney are joined at the hip a lot. And I've never met two people that work so well together and accomplish so much. And the project is so much better with them on working together. And Barney's still working on it some, even as he's a retired annuitant. And I was going to tell you a story about them working together. We were working on the downstream cofferdam 2017, setting our first big concrete shell. And it weighed about 4 million pounds, setting it down in water. So it was a tremendous effort. Our very first one, everybody's worried. It came down and unexpectedly sat on a concrete ledge that wasn't supposed to be there. It wouldn't go all the way down. And so we had all this equipment out there, and we're in danger of having to pull it back off and be a really issue. Jody and Barney locked themselves in the conference room for 2 hours to work on this problem. And they had a whiteboard just by themselves. And they went through all the alternatives and evaluated them and came up with a solution. And were able to set it down properly and make it work with the rest of the project and keep the schedule as well as all the people there. So, and they did it by themselves. And that was truly an amazing event. And that's just a testimony, one example of how they work together. But Barney is probably the best structural engineer I've ever been associated with, and any engineer for that matter. And he just had a way with him about not only solving problems, but seeing problems and dealing with them. And I was going to tell you an example on his as well. It deals with the downstream cofferdam. We're setting these big concrete shells, and we have to fill the inside of the shells with concrete. And about 22 feet high, something like that, or 25 feet high. And the contractor wanted to fill all that concrete at one time. And of course, usually a concrete form can't handle that much weight. It break. These shells were strong and they could handle the weight. And usually with placing that much concrete, Ron, we have an issue with heat of hydration, right? And the temperature can be too high, but they calculated that's going to be okay. But what Barney saw was that when concrete cures, it usually shrinks. But in this case, when it heats up, it actually expands before it shrinks. So he was concerned about the forces that would exert when it expanded on the shell, and he made the contractors check that. Turns out the shell would not have withstood that, and it would have been a catastrophe if they would have filled it up. So they were limiting themselves to 10 feet of height. So that's just an example of how he saw a problem and solved it before it happened. So, and there are all sorts of smaller examples of that for Barney, but he was just such a true asset to the project and such a great friend and great to work with. Next on the list is Tim Higgs. Tim was the environmental lead on the project in the late 90s, early 2000s, before he became section chief. But Kentucky Lock, like most big projects, had environmental issues, and we were in a mussel sanctuary and had endangered mussels and were impacting wetlands. And so most large projects have issues with environmental planning, potentially slowing down the project or environmental compliance. But Tim did such a fantastic job of planning and developing our relationship with our regulators on the client side, that we never had an environmental issue that slowed down the project. And that, again, is due to the work he did. And just to give you an idea, he almost single-handedly put out a huge highway environmental assessment in 2000, followed in 2001 by a supplemental environmental impact statement. And as a result, we did a wetland relocation, created a whole new wetlands. We went out and bought land near Benton, Kentucky, and built wetlands to offset the wetlands that we're impacting. And Tim did that all on his own. He was a one-man shop, and just incredible what he achieved. And then next on the list, to round out the top 6, are Ron Carter and David Kay. And I'm putting them together because they worked in the same office, and they obviously did such different things, but both of them were just instrumental in pushing the project forward. David for his whole career. Is David still even working? Yes, okay. And Ron until he retired. But Ron, to give you an idea, was a technical lead before he retired, so Barney took his place. But Ron got things done. We were in the late 90s, early 2000s, we had 6 large engineering firms working on the project. And Ron was responsible for 4 of those. And they were generating a lot of work on their own that we had to keep on going. And that was just a humongous job. But I was going to tell you one example of Ron Carter about what he achieved, as well as the whole team. But in 2009, the spring of 2009, Kentucky Lock was in the process of running out of money. We were going to be shut down. And we were having to compete for the economic stimulus money. We called it ARA money, American Reinvestment Act. And we had missed out on competing in the first rounds. They passed us over for several reasons. Anyway, we were competing for the last round of money to keep the project alive. And to do that, we had to award a construction contract, and we needed to award the upstream lock monoliths. We didn't have a complete set of plans and specs, and they wanted shovel-ready projects, but we developed a plan to do that and compete for this last piece of pie of money. And because of Ron's and other efforts, and Black & Veatch actually helped us as well, we were able to win the dollars we needed to award about a $60 million contract and save the project. So I don't know where we would be right now if that hadn't happened, and Ron Carter was a big part of that. So he, like many people, saved the project at many times and because of funding, that we almost had to shut the project down. But that certainly was one of the biggest ones. And David Kay was responsible for all our CAD drawings, a lot of the data on the project, and putting out CAD drawings, and just did an amazing job of keeping like all these 6 AEs, putting out drawings in the proper format and getting them in the proper places. And he had the best attitude of anybody I've worked with in the Corps. And he would do anything you asked him to do. He did it in a hurry and did it without a whimper. Unlike Ron. Ron whimpered every once in a while, didn't Ron? Okay, so that was my top 6 of the project, but I've got a few more, so you're going to have to sit through some more of them. Let's start off with geotech and geology. So geology was a big part of this project, has been during design and construction, and will be. And Paul Ross was our early geologist, and Mark Elson took over from him, and they both did a bang-up job. And we just similar to, we've had hiccups, but nothing that we hadn't been able to get through. So I think kudos to them. Also in geotech, Emily Carr, who's here today, worked on Kentucky Lock. And it wasn't as big an issue as the rock, but it still was issues. And we had a lot of earthenwork that she worked on as well. So really super glad to have her on Kentucky Lock instead of Shiloh, which was a whole different issue. All right. So this is going to be a blast from the past for some of us, but back in the engineering services days, Bill Vecchione and Buddy Abbott. I mentioned these 6 large engineering firms. They were contract management by Bill Vecchione, and he was the most organized person I've ever met, I think, and just did a fantastic job of organizing and managing these 6 engineering firms. And then Buddy Abbott was in charge of our relocation, so he had 2 of these engineering firms, the highway and railroad, and as well as other things on the project. And he was just super to work with as well. Cost engineering was also a big part of the project. Tron Pollack, Johnny Parham, Gary Stinson, and now Martin Lockhart have all worked on cost engineering, which is a big deal for us PMs anyway, and really appreciate all their efforts on it. Spec writing, Jose Garcia. Never met anybody as prolific as him and hardworking and productive. And he was just a blessing. We always gave him work at the tail end, hoping he'd catch up and get us on schedule, and he always did. I don't see how he did it. Electrical mechanical, Marlon Wells did a bang-up job on the electrical side, getting it ready before he retired. Long Trong also worked on it and progressed a lot of the designs. Mark Culo worked on it, as a matter of fact. H&H, Ben Rohrbach worked on Kentucky Lock back in his early days. He took over the models we had down at Vicksburg from when I worked on those models, and worked on Kentucky Lock for several years. And then I had quite a bit of interaction with Robert Dillingham and Randy Kerr because tailwater was always a big issue for Kentucky Lock, both for our bridge construction and downstream cofferdam, and both forecast as well as special operations. So I can't tell you how many times I bugged Robert and Randy about helping with forecasts or getting Mother Nature to cooperate. And they were extremely patient with me, and I really appreciate y'all's help. And speaking of patience, that brings up Adam Walker. Not that he has any. But Adam had to put up with me sitting next to me for so many years, and that's why patience comes into it. But Adam and I had a great relationship because he was a Chick Lock PM, and I was working on Kentucky, and there was a lot of symbiotic stuff we did, a lot of silly drills we worked on together. A little bit of belly aching thrown in there. But we actually were able to do things more efficiently because I would fill in for him sometimes and he would do the same for me. So I was really fortunate to have that and have that kind of feedback from somebody that's doing your kind of work, which I always felt bad for other navigation PMs and other districts that didn't have that feedback. So I really appreciated Adam's time putting up with me. Front office, Joanne Mann and her predecessor, Carol Warren, really had great experiences with Joanne. Is she still here? Oh, yes, okay. For all our VIP visits, and she did a lot more than VIP visits, but that's most of what I engaged with her. And, we always think of these as dog and pony shows, but really, it was our opportunity to show off the Nashville District and what we do, and it's really important. And she put so much effort into them, and every one of them that I was involved in went off well. And the king of all of these was the Motor Vessel Mississippi trip back in 2015. We had this big Motor Vessel Mississippi from the Mississippi Valley Division came and did a low water tour of the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers. It started in Chattanooga, went up to Kentucky Lock, came to Nashville, and then we had a Inland Waterway User Board meeting here in Nashville at the end of that. It was just a huge event, and we had generals on 12-inch centers on that boat. And then we had Mike Wilson on the boat too. But a huge amount of effort planning for this and executing it. And Joanne was the lead of this. And she, as always, she just did a bang-up job. And that was truly one of the highlights of my career was working on that and being a part of that Motor Vessel Mississippi trip. Programs office. And for y'all that aren't aware, I think most of y'all are, but programs office is how we bring money into the district and how we execute that money, how we spend it. Different from F&A, but so PMs, it's critical to get that money in here and be able to use it. And so they were a big part of what Adam and I did. And some people that really need a shout out on that are Tom Casey, and I'll mention him again, Jim Deal, Jonathan Jarrett, and Connie Flatt. And I can tell the way funding came out on Kentucky Lock, you couldn't have written a better action novel than the way we had money coming in and out or not coming in and out on Kentucky Lock. And there's one event I wanted to describe to you that involved Connie Flatt that kind of illustrates it. Back in the fiscal year 08 budget process, this was December 2006. At the tail end of that process, Kentucky Lock had $0 in the budget. So once again, this was the second of 4 potential shutdowns we had on the project. it didn't look good for the project. We may have to terminate our superstructure contract and mothball the project. Well, 2 days before Christmas, it might have been 3 days, Tim Winchell from LRD called Nashville because he had found $52 million for us in the budget. We went from zero, and he was going to take up with 52. And he couldn't find anybody in the office, but Connie was in the office. Was it 2 or 3 days? Do you remember? It was real close to Christmas. Yeah, you're the only one there, yes. But you were the right one there. That's what's the key to this. Connie knew exactly what to do. And we had to get this back to him before Christmas, I think. We had to have developed what they call work packages and described how we were going to spend this $52 million that we had no idea where that number came from. And so Connie and I, she called me and we worked on this and developed work packages and got it in and got it in the fiscal year 08 budget for $52 million, which is unheard of to go from zero to that at the tail end of the process. I mean, we never did find out where that $52 million came from. Yeah. Anyway, that's one illustration. And Connie was just been fantastic in managing and planning and programming the dollars on Kentucky Lock. If we hadn't had her, again, I don't know where the project would be. Also in the programs office was Holly Bolin and Lila Lewis. And where did Adam Walker go? He needed to hear this, but Holly and Lila, at different times, they were helping us with financial management and CFM's work. And they made life so much easier on Adam and myself. They did everything. They told us what we really needed to do most of the time. And we said, yes, ma'am, and did it. But they were fantastic to work with. And we're really a key to the success of the project. And then we get to my bosses, all the deputy district engineers, Mike Wilson, Patty Coffey, and Dave Day, were all hugely supportive and made a big difference in Kentucky and Chickasaw. And then my immediate bosses, Tom Casey again, was the branch chief, and David Hendricks and Jamie James. All of those made a huge difference in our ability to get the job done, and they made a big difference. And then the most important people in our office was Mary Terry, of course. And that's true for Pat Ashley at Kentucky Lock. Pat's been there for 23 years, still there. And they really ran the office, and Mary Terry made our lives so much easier. So thank you, Mary Terry, for all you did. And in the planning office, we had to do a post-authorization change report for Kentucky Lock in 2019 and 2020. And Ramunia saved the day on that. I didn't even know how to spell a packer, much less do one. And she really guided us through it and made a huge difference. And a packer was extremely important because we had to get reauthorized. Again, the project would have shut down if we hadn't done it right. So she made all the difference in the world. Contracting office played a huge role in Kentucky Lock. Some names that stand out: Isaac Taylor, Beryl Newsom, and Jamie Davies. I really enjoyed working with all of them. They made a big difference in the project. Office of Counsel, Grady Moore. Anybody remember Grady Moore? So spring of 2009, we were working on this contract, competing for these economic stimulus dollars, and we couldn't use a continuing contract for the first time. We had to put out a base with options contract. And again, we couldn't even spell base with options. And so we had to put out a brand new contract type. And I went to talk to Grady Moore about it. I was thinking about a base with 2 options, and he listened to me talk about it. He said, why don't you do a base with 10 options? I said, okay. And so we put out a base with 10 options as the best thing that ever happened. Again, if we hadn't done that, I don't know how we would have funded that contract. And it turned out fantastic. We were able to get, not only do we get this initial stimulus dollars to award that contract, but ultimately the project got $88 million of the stimulus dollars for this contract, the most of any project in the country. And that's a tribute to the team working to continue to show that we could use those dollars efficiently and could actually use them and obligate them. And having based with 10 options, we could easily exercise an option and use that money. So it made all the difference in the world. And then also in the Office of Counsel, Tom Browder, and I don't know where Tom went. Grady's retired, but Tom Browder worked on several of our big construction contract mods, but one in particular was December of 2013. These ARA dollars about to expire, and we had to get a mod executed by December 31st, which is on a Monday. So the weekend between Christmas and New Year's, he and Tony Ellis worked all weekend on this mod. to get it executed so we wouldn't lose that $1 million. So that was just a tribute to both Tom and Tony about how dedicated they were to make things happen. Operations, they played a huge role in Kentucky Lock, and the biggest impact they had were their lock masters. And they were involved in both the design and construction of Kentucky Lock. And Gary Hubbard was in the late 90s, early 2000s. You remember Gary. And then he was followed by Gerald Cunningham in the 2000s. And then Caleb Skinner has been there 15 years, 20. He's been lockmaster for 20 years. Wow. Okay. Gosh. Okay. And Caleb's been fantastic. Caleb has been involved in just about every aspect of design and construction. We're not only from a safety standpoint, I mentioned, the downstream cofferdam is a big safety issue, and we developed a lot of safety plans. Caleb was part of that. But interacting with industry, when we were in industry, the towing industry, the barges that come through, Caleb would help us with notifying industry. And then we're disrupting their whole operations there by construction, and work closely with Caleb. He's fantastic to work with. And his boss, Mike Looney, has been fantastic to work with, as well as going on VIP tours. Yes. Yeah. So Mike and I have been on quite a few of those at Kentucky Lock. Also in operations, the navigation section here in the district office interacted a lot with them. They played a big role. John Tribble, Brad Bishop. Is Brad Bishop here today? Yes. Yeah. Okay. And Jeff Ross, Owen Trauber, Megan Simpson, and Wayne Ligon. So really shout out to all of them for what they did on Kentucky Lock. Really were fantastic folks to work with. Anthony mentioned our stakeholders. So one of our biggest stakeholders is Tennessee Valley Authority. So TVA actually owns Kentucky Lock and will when we finish the new one. And so they're a huge stakeholder for us. And we're fortunate to have Jim Nisnick from TVA work on the team. He was their technical point of contact and engineer, and probably one of the most knowledgeable engineers of all hydraulic structures that I've ever been associated with. So really great to have him on. He unfortunately passed away in 2017, I believe. He was followed by Mike Morrison, which I think is still on the project. Do we know? Still on the project today. And also Nikki Berger out of their navigation office. And they've just been fantastic to work with. And they're integral members of the team. So in the same vein as stakeholders, we actually had customers in the navigation industry that their taxes paid for the lock. And so I would consider them more customers, but they've been involved in the design and construction of the project from day one. And day one being these models we built down in Vicksburg. And we had 3 people that really stand out. Steve Southern from Ingram, a port captain, Robert Brewer from Crounce, a port captain, and Charlie Ritchie, a pilot that worked for several companies. But these guys all came down to Vicksburg for 3 different meetings where we were looking at the models and testing out different designs and make sure they work. And Charlie Ritchie actually stayed down there for 3 days on his own dime and operated these remote controlled miniature towboats to make sure that we had the right design going. And Mike remembers that because he was the PM on Kentucky Lock, I think, when that happened. Yeah. But again, that was such a tremendous input that they had, and it was great to have them on board. And one of the things that came out of these meetings out of West is we shortened both approach walls by about 400 feet. You remember that, Mike? So we saved millions of dollars by that alone, as well as other different tweaks to the system and refining the filling and intake system. And then on the financial side for our customers, 2 people really stand out. One is Steve Little. He was the president of Crounce Corporation. That's a medium-sized towing company in Paducah. He served on the Inland Waterway User Board and was a chairman of it. And that's a board that's appointed by the president that they are responsible for helping manage the Inland Waterways Trust Fund that funds Kentucky Lock. He was a representative on the board that signed to Kentucky Lock, so I got to interact with him a lot. He was just fantastic to work with as far as helping the project out and making sure that our interests were looked at and that we're doing the right things. He retired, and Matt Rickus, who took over the president of Crounce, also served on the board and was involved in Kentucky Lock from day one that he started, and it still is as far as I know. So that was just fantastic to have those folks involved and getting their input back on the project. And lastly, the Tennessee River Valley Authority Association, Klein Jones, he was a stakeholder, and we interacted quite a bit with him, and he made a big difference on the project. All right. So I covered a lot of people there on Kentucky Lock. Did I leave anybody out? Jody, did you work on Kentucky Lock? Yeah. All right, I am going to talk about two other projects real quick, and this is part of my notes, but the Wolf Creek project. So I got pulled off Kentucky Lock to be the PM on Wolf Creek rehab project for 2 years. And two people really stand out during my tenure there as far as doing remarkable things. And one of those is here today. That's Chip Hall. And back in the spring of 2014, we had lowered the lake at Wolf Creek, I think, for about 5 years. And we were finishing up the project, about to raise the lake that spring. And lo and behold, in that fall of 2013, I guess it is, we found an endangered species in Big South Fork. And so we went to meet with the Fish and Wildlife Service in January of 2014 up at Big South Fork. And I remember vividly coming back the next day and sitting in Mike Wilson's office and saying, doesn't look like we're going to be able to raise the lake this year. And this is just a huge issue. And because we would have to resolve this endangered species issue before that. And this was January. We had to have the lake start to be raised by May, and there's just no way you can resolve it in that time frame under normal circumstances. But we had two aces up our sleeve. We had Chip Hall and we had Senator McConnell. I'm not sure which had the bigger impact. But anyway, Chip was very familiar with the endangered species process, but more importantly, he thought outside the box and didn't think like an engineer. He thought like a biologist that he was, and came up with these graphs that help us describe the impacts to this dusky-tailed darter. And we called these the chip charts. And none of us engineers can understand them, didn't think they were worth much. But it didn't matter because they were going to the Fish and Wildlife Service, which was full of biologists, and they loved chip charts. And so they were sold on it and really sold them on our whole approach to the system. And those chip charts saved the day, as well as Senator McConnell. And we were able to resolve the endangered species work, sign a biological opinion. And by May, I think it was, wasn't it, Chip? And we got the lake raised just in time so we could raise the lake. So Chip met the impossible goal there. The second person on Wolf Creek is none other than Tater Mills, who's also somewhere here today, too. There he is in the back. So when I started on Wolf Creek, Frank was starting on Wolf Creek, and he was new to the district. And he was an unknown quantity, but I got to know Tater very well, and turns out that he was a one-man shop. And I mentioned team in here earlier, but there's one person in here that doesn't need a team, and it's Tater Mills. And he had a responsibility of putting out this last construction contract to finish up the project, and we call it the site stabilization. And he did that work all on his own. I mean, he designed it. He put out all the drawings himself, the specifications, probably did the cost estimate. And he probably would have awarded the contract if he had a contracting warrant. But it was just an impressive show to watch Tater work, and really was glad to have him on the project. He also partnered with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife on Hatchery Creek. And refresh my memory what you had to do on that. You were helping them with designs, and we were sharing a disposal area. Do you remember, Tater? Okay, I'm going to point out it's easy to come up with ideas. It's hell of a lot harder to execute the ideas, and that's what you did, Tater. So if you ever go to Wolf Creek and you see the Hatchery Creek that flows out of the hatchery, that's Tater Mills. Okay, think about him when you see that. It may not have happened if he hadn't been involved. And then we had another contract after that. I was getting off the project, the road restoration, and I think Tater basically did that contract all by himself as well. So it's really something else to watch. And lastly, I'm going to talk about Chick Lock. So I got pulled in to be the Chick Lock manager several times. Once after Adam left, I think in 2014, 2015. And so Chick Lock was mothballed at that point. And we were trying to get it restarted, get money. July 1st, 2015, we got a call from headquarters. They said, we got $3 million. If you can award a contract this year, you get it. And we said, yeah, we can do that. Construction contract. Of course, we didn't even have a set of plan specs. This was July 1st, and we had to award it by September 30th. So do you think we did it? So the reason we got it done was because of 3 people. Corey Morgan, I think most folks y'all know Corey Morgan, Mike Arliss, who was a geologist and geotech, and Jamie Davies in contracting. And those 3 people did an amazing job, put together this contract, got the BCOES done, and put it on the street and got it awarded by September 30th. I don't think that'll ever happen again. So truly amazing. Okay. I'm down to the wire now. So I started this off talking about teams and and the fact that I didn't say it, but there's very large teams. And I really just skimmed the surface, but I think you can see how an award like this really comes from a lot of people working together. And I was just there in the peanut gallery most of the time watching this, being in awe of what happened. And I bless my lucky stars all the time that I got to work with such people and would be part of this and working on projects like Kentucky Chick and Wolf Creek, which are engineers' dreams, really, and the folks that I got to work with. So thanks to all of y'all for putting up with me during that time, and it's been a great ride, and I'll try to live up to this award and spread the word of Nashville District, and I have high hopes that the district will do well in the future. So I'm going to end at that. Thank you.
See, he wasn't kidding about the time. He needed to know how much time he had, so he's going to use it. That was awesome. Thanks, Don. Yeah, I was going to say, this is a great award for all the accomplishments you've done, but it sounds like everybody else did all the work and you were just kind of along for the ride. So I just want to thank everyone again for being here. If you'd like to join us on the 4th floor, we're going to have a little ceremony down there to unveil Don's name on the bronze plaque. So thank you all for coming again. One more round of applause for Don and we'll conclude. Thanks, everyone.